Hey everyone, it's Richard Metalfan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2020 album review. I'm actually not in my bedroom, I'm actually in my own living room, and I have a special guest with me. I have my friend Zack.
Hi everyone.
And today we're going to be doing a brand new album review, and we're going to be talking about the new album from the band The Unguided, entitled Father Shadow, which was released under Napalm Records. Now, for those of you who don't know who The Unguided are, they're a melodic death metal, metalcore, whatever genre you want to label them as, from Falkenberg, Sweden. And these guys have formed in 2010. And these guys, I think, are one of my favorite bands. Been listening to them for about 6 years. And these guys have, for those of you who don't know, that were a couple of the guys were used to be in an old band, Sonic Syndicate, and then they left, and then they pretty much, because of like musical differences, and formed The Unguided. And they put out their albums since 2011's Hellfrost, which I thought was a really good debut album. But man, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, Hellfrost is personally one of my favorite albums that they've released. I do think they, not necessarily a big stylistic change, but when they've had a rotation of members, as the original drummer, who was the drummer of Sonic Syndicate, left after Hellfrost, and then in 2016 bringing in a new guitarist and clean vocalist, that's kind of changed their writing style.
And then 2014, we got their second album, Fragile Immortality. And that was actually my introduction to The Unguided, as well as like when I first heard Sonic. I mean, I don't know about you.
I first heard Sonic around 2012 when I started hearing songs like Jack of Diamonds and Denied on YouTube, and I kind of went from there. And then when I found out that they kind of split, and then I heard the album Confessions in 2017, I was like, yeah, The Unguided is better.
Yeah. And then 2016, we got their Lust and Loathing, which I thought was a really good album. And then it was around after that time they had a little lineup change, and then original clean vocalist and guitarist Roland Johansson left, and then they got Jonathan Thorpenberg, and then they put out the Brotherhood EP, which I thought was a really good introduction. And I think that Jonathan fills in those shoes that Roland has.
Definitely. I think they're two totally different stylistically, vocalists stylistically. I think when you listen to Jonathan, his voice is a lot less raspy, a lot more straight up clean, but it's really interesting, and I love him, and I think he's great, and his solos are also fantastic.
And then their last album, And the Battle Royale, which was the first album with Jonathan, was really good. But here we are with album 5, Father Shadow. Does this live up or exceed what And the Battle Royale has? In my opinion, I think it definitely has. I feel like the band has stepped it up a little bit. I feel like every album they've just gotten better and better. They pretty much have a formula that they stick with, but you could definitely tell that they try to like experiment a little bit with their sound.
Definitely, I completely agree with that. I will say when they released Royal Gutori, the EP, which had 2 songs off this album a few months back, it gave me a lot of hope for the album. I think the EP differed from the record a bit in terms of what I was looking at, but I really enjoyed both the EP and I really enjoyed the record, and
Yeah,
I think it's solid.
Yeah, I think just the vocals from on this album is great. Like Richard Hunnison's vocals, like I feel like his vocals are a lot more clear, more crisp, a lot more, his like growls are a lot more powerful.
He's just gotten better over time. Some people get worse over time. Perfect example, Chris Barnes of 6 Feet Under. That shit's atrocious.
Yeah, don't listen to that.
But his vocals have just gotten so much better, and I really, really enjoy listening to him growl, because it's really improved, and you can clearly understand it, which is nice.
And then the clean vocals from Jonathan Forkenberg, I feel like his clean vocals really shine. It almost feels like he, with some of these songs, have a little bit more of a power metal vibe. He has that kind of little bit in his voice.
I don't know necessarily about that. I do think he has that power metal vocal style. I think he would be very good at that, but that might be stretching it a bit, personally.
Yeah, just the guitar work from Jonathan and Roger, just like Roger comes up with some really great riffs, and Jonathan can just shred. He's like equally as good as Roland, but Jonathan has that, definitely, you could definitely tell he has like almost kind of like the same style that Roland has.
Definitely, Jonathan's a great guitarist. I think his solos on the album were great, and I think he's been a great addition to the band since he's been in there for a couple years now.
Yeah, and bass is pretty audible, and Henrik Olofsson's bass, and this was actually his last album with the band because he actually left before the album was released, and I think you could definitely hear it well in the mix.
Definitely. As I said, whoever is mixing their album, fantastic job. Great mix.
Yeah, and drumming-wise, Richard Schill definitely does a really great job holding the beat, and especially does like some sick double bass parts mix as well.
I do think the one thing, if I had to complain about one thing, the cymbal mix is kind of weird. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between a lot of them. But overall, I love Richard. I think he's great at what he does.
Yeah, so with further ado, let's dive into this album track by track because we pretty much are now 5 minutes in. We'll just start off with Childhood's End. Now, this is a pretty good way to start off this album. Great with riffs with some orchestral backing along with some arc verses from Richard until like the clean till the chorus. Can't even speak today, fuck. And it features a great solo, which leads into like a break in the final chorus with some really good melody.
I think Childhood's End was an absolutely perfect beginning track. I think it's a fantastic opener. I think Jonathan's solo is awesome. I think the little spoken word intro that they have, that's about 5 seconds long, adds a lot. And I thought this is one of the top tracks on the album, in my opinion.
Yeah, Never Yield, which has some good melody guitar to kick things off in it. Like I mentioned before, it feels like this song has a little bit of power metal vibe, especially with this song, and especially like in the chorus and musically.
Never Yield for me is what you expect out of a band when they release a single, because this was released as a single a couple weeks ago, and this is exactly what you would think of when you think of a single. It's a perfect song for radio. It's a good song. It sets the tone, as I said, perfect single for radio. It's not the best track on the album by any means, but it's a good setting stone, especially early in the album.
Yeah, and next song on the album is called War of Oceans, and it's a really catchy tune. I really love the guitars, and the keyboards and the vocals really create sort of like a melody, and the verses are pretty much very driven sounding, and the guitar solo in this song is sick.
I completely agree. This is a lot more clean-oriented. The cleans are much more prevalent. There isn't as much harsh vocals here, but not necessarily my favorite track on the album, but it's a really good track. I think Jonathan's solos here and very much throughout the album are fantastic.
Yeah, and then Breach, the clean vocals are really amazing, and they have a lot more power to it, and there's a lot of dynamic to it. And then I feel like the harsh vocals, once they come in, have pretty much changed the dynamic, and I think it's a really balanced, like vocally and musically.
I think Breach is what you think of when you think of the Unguided. If you're asking me to like pick one song from each album that is to help me guess the band, I'd say, oh, that's the Unguided. This is that track. I think it has everything you expect, a lot of great mix of cleans and harshes. I love the keys. I think they were awesome on this, and personally, this is one of the higher tracks for me. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and then things get really interesting when Love Comes to Die, which starts off a little bit softer, pretty much for what we have heard so far. And I love the keys and sort of like Jonathan's vocals really shine in here. And then especially with the second half with Richard coming in the second half is pretty good.
This is one of my lower tracks on the album. I think it's a lot more ballad-esque. Not my personal favorite.
Has that kind of vibe to it.
Not my personal favorite, but it is a good song. I think it's certainly not what I expect out of the Unguided, but I do appreciate it adds something different to the album because a lot of their albums, a lot of the songs sound very similar. This is a total 180, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, trying to experiment. And then we get to Crown Prince Syndrome, which was actually the first song that was released from this album. It's a very mid-paced, rocking tune. The guitars have a little bit of like groove to it, and the harsh vocals sound clear, and the cleans just sound really good, especially in the chorus of the song.
And if you haven't checked out the video for it, absolutely go check it out. It's a really good video. I think this is a perfect radio single, and unlike Never Yield, which is, as I also said, was a radio single, I think this is a better track. I think there is nothing wrong with that track. It's a great track, and it's personally something that if I'm just looking for a song to pass 5 minutes, I'll throw that on.
Yeah, and then we get to Fate's Hand, which musically it has like a power metal vibe similar to like Never Yield. And the vocals pretty much go hand in hand, especially from Richard and Jonathan, and the chorus is just really catchy.
Fate's Hand is my favorite song on the album. I love the solo. I think they're hitting on a lot of really key points in which I love them for. Hands down, I think it's the best track, although I don't know if that's necessarily a popular opinion.
And then Standalone, which the Standalone Complex, which the verses in the song pretty much have a lot of kick to it, and the guitars are heavy, and they pretty much have a lot of bite to it, and I think the guitar tone on this album is pretty good. And the clean vocals on this song feel a little bit soft, and will pretty much have a different energy to it, and it has some really good smooth transitions.
I think this song has a lot more of the keys aspect that you had in early Sonic Syndicate and in early the Unguided stuff. I really like it. I think you kind of get that vibe from Sonic Syndicate's second album, which name is
Only Inhuman.
Only Inhuman. Thank you. I think you get a lot more of that vibe, something similar to a Psychic Suicide song, which is my favorite Sonic Syndicate song. I get a similar vibe. It's just not as fast, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great track.
Yeah, and then we get to Lance of
Longinus, I think.
Lance of Longinus. I can't even pronounce it. It's a very mid-paced song, very catchy chorus, and some really chugging riffs, especially in the verses.
For me, I didn't get this. I didn't think it was a great ending to the new tracks that they released. Personally, I think it's the weakest song on the album. It's not that it's a bad song. It's just, especially for songs that hadn't been released by the band, I didn't get it. I didn't feel like it's a strong ender. But it's not a bad song by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not... It's not the best thing they've ever released.
Yeah, and then we get to the next two songs being Seth and Gaia, which was taken off of the Royal Allegory... I can't even pronounce it.
Royal Allegory Tour.
Yeah,
Something like that.
That EP. The first song is Seth, which starts off with a little bit of like distortedness, and then it just gets more clearer and just really just sick. It just really picks up. Has some really sick double bass drum parts from Richard, and the really just great guitar solo, and just like the vocals from Jonathan and Richard really are good.
Seth is one of my favorite tracks. I think the two EP songs are the best two songs on this album, and I don't think it's really that close. I think Seth is an absolutely fantastic track. Also, fantastic video if you've never watched it.
Yeah.
It's really cool how they bring in their wives.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it has a great solo. I really like it. For me, that song personally means a lot, so it's great.
Yeah, and then we get to Gaia, which just hits right from the get-go. Very fast song, and I feel like this song reminds me a little bit of like Aftermath from Sonic Syndicate a little bit, just like in the structure. Sure, and I especially love like there's like the little breakdown in there.
Gaia is the best song on this album, and I think it's better than Seth. It's my favorite song that they've maybe ever released. I think it's a perfect track. I love that chorus. I think it's awesome. I think everything about that song is just perfect. I think when you're in the chorus, that nice mix of the harshes and the cleans, it's just perfect. There is not a better song on the EP. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and then the last three songs are actually cover songs from Richard and Roger's old band, Sonic Syndicate, being Jailbreak, Denied, and Jack of Diamonds. And these songs are, like, compared to the originals, I feel like these covers are really great. I feel like they have, like, a new energy, a new vibe to it.
I think Jailbreak of the three covers is the best. I think it's just as good, if not better, than the original. A lot of that comes down to Eden Fire was not mixed very well.
Yeah.
I think Denied was good, not great. I think Jack of Diamonds was good, not great. I do think Jonathan's vocals changes it, because you can understand his vocals a lot clearer than in the originals. For what it's worth, I think the drums were poorly mixed on these. I couldn't make any distinguishing things. However, it's really cool seeing them do that, especially since they more or less signed away their rights.
Yeah, which is kind of bullshit. But anyway, Father Shadow by The Unguided is a really good album. If I were to give this album a score, I'd probably give this a solid 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. What would you give it?
I would give this, I was going to probably say about an 8 out of 10, maybe a 7.5. I don't think overall this is the best album that they've released. However, the high points of this album are the highs of this album are fantastic. However, the lows on this album are kind of lower than some of their other stuff. So overall, I think it's the highs very much outweigh the lows, hence an 8 out of 10. But I think they always have room to improve, and I'm really excited to see where they go from this, because my understanding is this was kind of a concept, and that it could very well be continued on the next thing. So we shall see where it goes.
So yeah, that's another review of the new Unguided album. Thank you guys for watching. See you all in the next video, and as always, keep it metal.